All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Once again, good morning or afternoon. Welcome wherever you are. My name is Mike Turner, and I am an ERP growth advisor with Madken. And I'm joined by Dave Lear, founder, as well as Lane Johnson, principal at Madken Advisors. So whether you're a CFO, controller, finance leader, or simply interested in how AI is impacting finance, we're certainly glad that you're here today. So one thing that I've personally noticed over the last year in talking with finance leaders is that the AI conversation has seemed to change dramatically. So in other words, a year ago, the question was, should we even be paying attention to AI right now, right? Today, the question is, how do we leverage AI responsibly while maintaining trust, governance, and control? And that's exactly what we'll discuss here today. We're going to, in terms of agenda, we're going to dive into AI considerations, governance, trust, security, Sage's approach, some practical use cases, and we're going to leave ample time for Q&A at the end. But I want to remind you, feel free if a question pops up during this webinar at any point, please drop it in the chat. There's a Q&A space. You can drop those there. It will be moderated, and we'll make sure that we tackle those for you while that's top of mind. So, Dave, one thing that well, before we go there, one thing that stood out to me, I was at Sage Future in San Francisco this year. And by the way, if you attended Sage Future, drop a hand in the chat. I'm curious about how many attendees. But anyway, one thing that stood out to me this year was that AI wasn't just a side conversation anymore. It was woven into almost every discussion happening around finance and ERP. And I also had the opportunity to not only see Aaron Harris's keynote, but I also got a chance to chat with him personally in San Francisco. And one theme that kept surfacing was helping organizations work smarter, move faster, and make better decisions. And that's exactly what many finance leaders are asking about these days. So, Dave, one thing, I hear frequently is the excitement around AI. It's hot, it's sexy even. But I also hear questions around trust. In other words, can I trust the output? Can I trust the source? How can I maintain governance? So, from your seat, what are some of the key considerations that you're discussing with finance leaders these days around this?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Thanks, Mike, and welcome to everybody. And glad you all are able to join us today. I think one of the things I wanted to do first was just take a step back and talk and think about this before we get into some of the really cool use cases Lane's going to show us. Is just think about where AI sort of intersects with finance and some of the considerations, because I think as we all know, finance is a little different than maybe marketing or the operations team. Some of those things that they might use AI for can be a little bit um, less structured, or they, if they're a little bit wrong, it's okay. We can kind of modify. But in finance, you know, we're talking about moving cash. We're talking about making big business decisions based on the analytics that we come up with. We're talking about filing financial statements with regulated bodies, things that have a lot of reputational risk, a lot of things that really have some downstream impact if we get them wrong, and we don't really have a very high tolerance for that in the accounting and finance space. And so, some considerations that continue to bubble up. I mean, I think data quality is key for everybody. AI seems to have a very, very good ability to help clean up data, but what it seems to struggle with is using bad data and somehow getting good results. And I think people have tried thinking that they can kind of skip to the end, and that tends to not work out very well. So, just like when we were doing business intelligence and dashboarding, I mean, data quality still remains something that's very important if we really want AI to give us reliable results. In the finance space specifically, data security, internal controls bubble up, right? I mean, you've got these AI tools that you can hand data to, and they can do magical things. But what's happening to my data? Is it still secure? If I wouldn't share this data with the guy sitting next to me, am I comfortable with giving it to this AI model that I don't really know kind of what actually happens? But there a lot of them now have a lot better controls. It's maybe making sure that we're very educated about how they work and that we're very knowledgeable about making sure everything is selected correctly so that it's comfortable. Internal controls, we like for the right people to be able to do the right things, we and have access to the right information, and so maintaining that. um, and then we get into trust, and so we have this model that's doing amazing things. How do we know that it gave us the answer that we that is an actual correct answer, and how can we drill in and understand how it came to that conclusion, or what, or did that process for us to make sure that it was correct. And then I think maybe the biggest thing is just keeping that human review, keeping that accountability. When that report goes to the SEC and it has things in it that are wrong, I don't think we get to blame the AI module, the AI model. I don't think we get to blame the self-driving car for doing crazy things. I think at the end of the day, has to be a person that's accountable. And so these are all things that I think when we talk about AI as it relates to finance is a little bit more elevated, considerations than just getting your favorite LLM off and just having to do blog posts for you or something like that. Like we're some pretty serious stuff here.
For sure, for sure. Very helpful context. Makes me think about that rogue agent that Aaron was talking about at Future with the lady that worked for Meta. A wild story. But anyway, great point, great context. Um, One thing that I've been hearing from a lot of people in the finance space, as well as a lot of most organizations, is that they aren't necessarily looking for AI to like make decisions for them. They're looking for AI to help them find information faster and basically become more productive. So, Dave, you're very entrenched in the space. What are some of the common questions that you're hearing from executives and CIOs and CFOs, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, the first thing is we're all very excited about AI. I mean, it's got enormous potential, a lot of opportunity. Everybody is, everybody has experienced the magic of, the 2 hour task that you have getting done in 2 minutes, and you immediately your brain and everybody's brain goes to, how do I do this at scale? How do I get more of this, because this was so great. It makes my life so much easier for some of these mundane tasks and these repetitive tasks. Obviously the C-suite, the CFOs, the CIOs, they see this same thing, and there becomes a downward pressure just to do something. Like, you guys are all doing tasks, use AI. Here you go. And so there's a it's pretty easy to go spin up a bunch of Claude licenses or ChatGPT licenses and get those into the hands of the users. And then we've talked to some of them that are, pretty quickly saying, well, where's the P&L impact, right? How are we saving money? How are we making more revenue? And so there's a lot of pressure to do something because we see the promise. Um, and a lot of, but then as we get into it, it's as finance professionals, I think there is some consideration around, okay, I definitely see the promise, but how do we make sure that the things that are important to us as finance professionals are still top of mind, and we don't get carried away, because there's definitely the potential here, but we definitely want to make sure that we um, maintain our principles in terms of how we handle data and how we handle our processes. And so I think and this is, I think, the point of this discussion as we go forward is some of the desire of practical use cases, the uncertainty about where to start. We have these tools. These tools have arrived. What are some of the things that we can do rather than having kind of a blank sheet of paper? What are some of the things that can maybe be delivered to us by vendors? What are some things that can be collaborated with advisors? What are some things that I can do myself that would be impactful, that are scalable, and that can help kind of the whole organization? And so I think as we advance in the conversation here, and Lane's giving us some color on some of the things Sage is working on, I think that starts to stir those ideas, and we're pretty excited about all the possibilities here.
Yeah. Absolutely. So it sounds like the challenge is leveraging AI without sacrificing trust, governance, and controls. And I believe that that's something that organizations really need to think about, and that's the balance, the balancing act. That's something that a lot of conversations should be happening around these days, in my professional opinion. But that certainly gives us a strong foundation. So I want to shift gears and discuss Sage's approach. So Lane, walk us through how Sage is thinking about responsible AI these days.
Yeah, Mike, thanks. So, we had a great time at Sage Future out in San Francisco recently. And I think my biggest takeaway, especially from Aaron Harris, the Sage's CTO, was that Sage is thinking about AI very specifically, through the lens of finance. His message wasn't like, "Hey, AI is exciting. Let's bolt it onto everything." I think it's a very thoughtful approach, as it should be. AI and finance has got to be built differently for all of us. So, like Dave talked about, a lot of business functions, writing that blog post, helping with a marketing campaign. AI is still helpful, even if it's directionally right. But in finance, close enough isn't good enough, as you all know. So if you're producing financial statements, explaining variances, approving transactions, presenting information to your board, you're going to have to understand, where that information came from, because you're accountable, right? So things can't be off by a penny. And so that's why, Sage's approach is different, and it's centered around responsible AI, that transparency, and then we'll see a little bit later, explainable outputs, and then, that human oversight, keeping that human in the loop, and then security first design. So, and all those things, those aren't just technology principles. I think those are, as finance and accounting professionals, those are principles that we're already familiar with today. And I think one of the phrases that really stood out to me, for AI and finance, it's got to be a clear box, more a black box, right? I think, we've all seen where, you give Chat GPT or Claude something, and it just gives you an answer back, and you don't know how it got there. But with Sage, the finance team will and should be able to see how the system got the answer, so that they can validate it and, still own that decision. So, when I think about Sage's approach, the goal isn't to replace like judgment, review, accountability. The goal is to let AI handle, those routine tasks, that routine work, surface things earlier, bubble things up, and help people make better decisions, while keeping, the finance teams in control. And so I think that's the philosophy. This next slide is kind of showing how Sage is turning that philosophy into like actual strategy. And so it comes down to two things. On the left, um, uh, we've got AI inside your workflows. And so these are agents inside Sage Intacct that understand accounting context, financial data, your approvals, permissions, and the way all your teams operate today. Second, Sage is creating, a governed pathway to connect Sage Intacct directly to, broader AI and your technology stack, outside of Intacct. No finance system, including Intacct, exists in isolation. You've all got payroll systems, CRMs, maybe budgeting tools, data warehouses, Snowflake, banking data, fund accounting systems, investment systems that you want to connect to. And so I think that is the important distinction on this slide is Sage is not just saying, hey, just take Intact, export it into this random AI tool and cross your fingers. Here, Sage is saying, we're going to give your team a secure way to use AI in whatever kind of tool you want, but keep the permissions, controls, workflows, and that audibility intact. And so the left side is about AI inside, the right side is about controlled access. And I think that's what makes this different than just using a generic chatbot. So I think with that context, maybe let's move to the next slide and talk a little bit more about, some of the things on the left. And so this slide just gives you a quick view of the areas that Sage is focused on right now. We're going to touch quickly on AP automation, anomaly detection, the close process, the new finance intelligent agent, and this AI gateway a little more. And so, I don't think these are really like random AI features. They're going to kind of follow the same basic pattern, automate routine work, surface exceptions earlier, and keep you in control. And so we'll start with AP automation. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I think everybody in this call is familiar with what AI AP automation is. And I think why we included this here was just I think it's the most practical example of AI being applied inside a workflow. I mean, nobody wants their team spending hours keying invoice, chasing that coding and approvables, and just manually entering things in the system. And so this is one area that Sage has continued to invest in. And I think the value isn't just kind of reading that invoice, but it's helping with the coding, supporting matching if you're using purchasing, helping with the approvals, getting the items routed. But that key message of finance teams, you're still owning the review, the approval, and exceptions, right? But the pattern is, let AI help with that repetitive work and keep that person in that loop, keep you guys in control. And so I think AP automation is a good example of kind of that automation piece, but then moving into anomaly detection is how AI can help focus your review. And so I think this is just another great practical example. The basic idea is pretty simple. The system's looking for transactions that don't fit your historical patterns. So in this example, it's flagging combinations of account, department, and location that look unusual and might need additional review before they hit the books. And so the point isn't that AI is replacing your review and making the decision here. It's helping you as reviewers to focus. And so instead of asking you to manually inspect and try to figure out everything at the same level of attention and detail, the system's surfacing these things that look different, unusual, or be potentially risky, right? That helps with your data quality as well as a better approval process. And so, you know, it's a great feature. If you don't have it turned on, let's talk more. And so from here, maybe let's move into close. And so this is where the challenge isn't about reviewing a journal entry, entering an AP bill. This is about, coordination, bringing, teams together. And so I think all of the finance leaders on this call know that close is really a coordination effort. It's not just one task. It's, reconciling cash, making journal entries, variance explanations, supporting documentations, lots of people across lots of different teams, lots of entities and departments potentially. So, I think the goal of close automation isn't just automation for the sake of automation. It's really about this is about visibility. So who's behind, what's blocked, what are the bottlenecks? What do we need to review before you can confidently close your books and get those reports out? So this is where AI and automation can start to hopefully make the close feel less reactive and more just kind of an easy process. And so, this tool it's especially valuable when you've got multiple entities, multiple owners, or you're just have a closed process you're tracking, in Excel. And so, some of these slides that Dave's showing, it can be hard to know where everything stands. I think a spreadsheet can tell you maybe what should happen, but not always tell you what is actually happening in real time. And so this is a centralized place to track tasks, owners, status, timing. And this matters because I think it's not just about getting the task done. It's about knowing where the risk is, being able to come back and look at the close holistically after it's over. How long do things really take? Where are the bottlenecks? What can we do to make this a smoother process? And so and then, when I look at this and kind of seeing these other slides, it's about accountability. And, kind of back to Aaron Harris, one of his visions that he's been talking about for years is, the continuous close. And he even jokes about getting rid of the close. Maybe he's not joking. I don't think the close will ever fully disappear, but the direction's clear, right? This needs to become less of a monthly scramble and more of a process that's monitored throughout the period, and hopefully becomes, just an afterthought. If you've got those bank feeds going and cash is being reconciled regularly, transactions are being reviewed as they happen. Things are the AI is bubbling up exceptions real time. Things are being flagged. Things are tracked centrally. Hopefully this can be a big win for your team. So, that's the real opportunity. It's not just closing faster. It's better visibility, clearer ownership, and more confidence. Once you get to that deadline. And so, close automation is a good example of AI, how AI can help you manage a process. But what we'll look at next, the finance intelligent agent, it's a little different. It's about getting you answers from your Sage Intacct data. So the finance intelligent agent, it's one of the most compelling examples, I think, because it changes how you're going to interact with your financial data in Sage Intacct. And so the idea is that you can just ask a finance question in natural language, in kind of the context, and get an answer in the context of your Sage Intacct. And so in this example, the question's asking for a 3-month trend for account group revenue and the accrual books. And I think the point here isn't whether that is the perfect wording of a finance question. It's that the user doesn't have to know which report to run, which dashboard to go to, how to get the raw data, and build this manually. The agent's going to interpret your question. It's going to go to the underlying financial data, uh, and produce an output that you guys can all work with. And I think what's different with this is that this is not just a generic AI. This is grounded in finance. And so, as you can see here, the answer comes back in a way that we all can use. You've got a chart, you've got a graph, you got a table, and you get these insights. And of course, we all love Excel. So if you want to get all this out to quickly to Excel, that's just a few clicks of a button. But the most important thing on this screen, isn't that it just created this chart for you on the fly. It's that the user can click how Copilot worked this out. So this ties, directly back to what Dave was talking about earlier. Trust, explainability, accountability, because you're the ones that are accountable. And so if I'm presenting a number, to the CFO, an auditor, your board, like we've said, you can't just tell, well, this is what AI told me. That's not going to be acceptable. So, you know, this is kind of really a strong proof point for Sage's approach. The system isn't just trying to give you an answer, it's trying to explain that answer so you can expect it, validate it, and explain it. And so, I mentioned the clear box. This is like the clear box moment. This slide shows what this means in practice. I think the system is documenting all the steps it took along the way. It's giving the user a way to understand the logic behind the answer, validate that that's the right data that was used, and just decide, does this output make sense? And I think that's important because the human still has to be accountable. The agent can help you produce the analysis, but you've got to review it, challenge it, and make your own decisions. And so, this just goes back to that Aaron's message that we heard over and over again at Future. It's about confidence, control, and accountability. And so I think this is really powerful. This is just natural language, and traceability. And so I think, moving on to the next slide, the AI gateway I'm really excited about. I see kind of several people on this call who this week have turned this on. I'm really excited to see what some of our customers do here. But the easiest way to think about the AI gateway is it's going to give you, a governed control way to connect Sage Intacct to those AI tools you're already using. So I know many of you are using Claude, Gemini, Chat GPT. And I think, the challenge is that finance teams don't want to expose sensitive financial data. Like maybe you've got payroll by employee in your system, and that's very sensitive. So the AI gateway is built specifically to address that problem. It's not just the connection, it's that the connection respects the controls, the permissions that are already established inside your Sage Intacct environment. So instead of creating this shadow AI process out of your system, this is going to give you a controlled path to use AI with your existing tools. And so on this next slide, this is just a really great practical example that we saw at a demo this week. And you might have seen this at Sage Future, but this is, if you know Claude, this is what Claude looks like. Here, Claude has been connected to Sage Intacct, and somebody's asked a question about the top 10 builds. And so the point isn't that Claude just getting unlimited access. This connection is governed by the Sage Intacct security. And so if I ask a question about an entity that I shouldn't have access to, Claude isn't going to give me that. Claude is reaching back into Sage Intacct through that controlled connection and enforcing those existing permissions and access. And so, this isn't just copying and pasting Sage Intacct into Claude or giving Claude a master key to your ERP. It's more like saying, Claude can become that conversational interface, can help you with that reporting, but still have all those great Sage controls that they've been working on for years. And so, I think this is just a really exciting area that we're going to just, I think, see a lot more of. And so moving on to kind of maybe the final piece of the ecosystem that we're seeing right now is this AI agent workplace. And so this I know will be a focus kind of the second half of the year for Sage. So the easiest way to think about this is just, and you can see this is going to be inside Sage Intacct. This is an AI agent marketplace, just like that, Apple iPhone marketplace we're all used to, or that Sage Intacct marketplace. And over time, Sage directly, partners like us, third-party developers, and customers like y'all are going to be able to build your specialized agent inside of the Sage Intacct ecosystem. And so I think the point is that innovation isn't going to only come from Sage, building every use case, but the central, I think is the ecosystem um, is going to be more specialized agents for different industries, workflows, specific business needs that I think, Sage won't even be thinking about. Like it might not even occur to them. But so I think for you as customers, this is going to be more targeted AI capabilities that will fit, directly into your existing workflows that you're already doing. And so, and then again, the important theme is governance. These agents are going to be vetted by Sage. I think so they're safe, they're secure. I think the value isn't just that you can build an agent; it's that these agents are embedded directly into Sage Intacct, into your existing kind of processes and procedures. Um, so I think if we kind of step back from these examples, I think the bigger picture is Sage is moving from individual AI features towards a more connected agent-based workflow. And I'm going to hand it back to Dave and let him talk a little bit more about where this is headed and kind of how finance leaders need to be thinking about this.
Yeah, I think that's great, Lane. So I think maybe just to wrap up here and then hand it back to Mike. I think one thing I'll point out, just going to Sage Future over the last few years, is we've been hearing about AI and the potential for it coming into Sage Intacct and the things that they've been building. I feel like it's the past 2, 3, 4 years at least, with Aaron Harris kind of teasing this out. And so, I think what's really exciting that, obviously AI in and of itself and the way it impacts our world, and in all of our different things that we do in the world that aren't just finance related is pretty exciting. But to see some of these things start to become real has been very exciting, and see them be delivered, and also just feeling confident that Sage is being very thoughtful about this as they take these use cases and build them out and deploy them and make sure that they're thoughtful and trustworthy explainable, and keeps the human in the loop. And so I'm real interested as they sort of open up this environment and they open up the market here for seeing more of these agent-based workflows, seeing the ideas that people have. I think if we think back to the slide on the customer conversations around where do I start or what are some practical use cases, I hope these were a few that resonated with people and that makes sense. And if you're not taking advantage of them today, maybe it's something to explore. And I think we're just gonna see this, just like we see in our everyday lives. This is probably going to exponentially grow, and really like not with the point of trying to, um, maybe more to the point of just trying to take out all those repetitive tasks, take out kind of some of the things that are um, more repeatable, and allow us to do more analysis and be smarter about kind of what's happening in the business, and the moves we need to make kind of going forward.
Yeah, great stuff. I think that's where the opportunity begins. It's not necessarily about just hiring less, but just being more effective with that additional time that you have. So great points. Listen, we've covered a ton of ground today so far. I mean, we've discussed trust, governance, security. Lane took us through some practical use cases, future direction, whole thing soup to nuts. So now we'd love to hear from you. So please drop your questions in the Q&A chat right directly to the right of the chat. There's a Q&A option. Just click that. Drop your questions. There's no bad questions. If you're thinking it, there's a good chance that someone else probably is as well. So very curious to hear your questions around this topic. Um, let's see what we have here in the chat real quick. Looks like Sherry has one, and maybe this one may be for you, Dave. Let's see. Is there one AI add-on that covers the close and finance intelligent agent, or are they separate?
Yeah, so currently they're separate. And so there's a SKU specifically for the close automation piece that can be added. The finance intelligence agent is rolling out kind of in phases. And the understanding we have currently is that it's going to be maybe more token based kind of system once they get everybody kind of established and they understand how it's going to work and how it makes calls. And so currently two separate SKUs to have both of those added.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave. Lane, question for you. What's been the reaction from customers and clients as they start, getting exposed to these capabilities and using them from your seat?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, you know, closed automation, we've got one customer, and I looked earlier this week, they've got over 250 entities in intact that they have to close every month. And so like for that, it's been game changing, right? Just being able to kind of centrally track that close, and really eye opening. And so then we finally kind of have our first group of clients getting our hands on the finance intelligent agent, and then just not having, like, as a finance leader, like not having to create that report or ask somebody to create that report or know where that report is, like how we saw the finance intelligent agent just creating that on the fly. I think that's just been a game changer, to make people just, much more efficient, and be able to kind of rely on Sage Intacct directly and not kind of be exporting data or having the, somebody on the team help build a report or get us to help build a report.
Awesome, awesome. Makes sense. All right, looks like we have another question. Kason Madison, thanks for that, Kason. So do you anticipate that AI will replace and or render other add-ons, for example, Elixir, obsolete, or is it viewed as more of an additional tool at this stage? Anybody can take that one.
Yeah, I think, man, I think to some degree, like what we've experienced as apps roll out and as these different solutions roll out, is there's just a lot of personal preference here. And so I don't know if obsolete maybe is the right word. I do think that there may be people who take a step back as they see tools arrive and they experiment with them and may decide that they can set one down and pick up another, if that makes more sense for them or for their specific use case. There may be something like Velixo that you're mentioning specifically where you've got a 30 tab spreadsheet that's doing something very specific, and maybe kind of one AI agent, I don't, maybe it can't handle kind of all those things at one time and do all the formatting the way you need it and stuff. So I think it's going to be very use case specific. Um, but it's definitely an extra tool that can be in people's belts for whenever they, are um, are encountering different situations, and be able to see if there's a way to modify current processes to be more efficient.
Absolutely. So, Dave or Lane, either one of you, um, where do you see the biggest gaps between expectations around AI and reality?
I well, I just think that this is one of those things, and I've seen this not just with AI, but even back in the business intelligence dashboarding days, where you'll find that you'll do kind of a use case, you'll do an example, and it's super easy and super awesome, and um, and then you just want to pour gas on it, and I think that's where it gets a little bit harder because you have one use case and you really need 10 or you really need 20, and coming up with kind of all those extra ones I think is just like a little like incrementally harder, right? Especially to fit it to your already busy workday. And so I think maybe what some people struggle with is, not finding that one or two or three things, but finding those 10 things, or thinking about an entire workflow. I think another thing that's challenging, and I don't know that I have the best answer for it, is the idea of the human in the loop. And if the dream is like these automated processes that go end to end without any human touch, I don't think we want that either, right? And so trying to maybe like take a step back from some of our current processes and think through the controls, and think through like, do we have that human in the loop right here because of something that happened in the past and now that's not a problem anymore, so we could take that out? Or do we have that in there because it's super important and we have to still have it, and that needs to be part of our future workflow? And so I think there's practical decisions that overlay on the fact that we have this really cool tool and this really cool opportunity, but then there's the practicality of making it kind of work.
Yeah, very helpful context. Thanks for that, Dave. All right, we got Matthew Blizio. All right, Matthew wants to know, once you connect Sage, and this is going to be for Lane, once you connect Sage to an AI model via the AI gateway, Claude, for example, do you interact with the AI via the Claude interface, or is it still within Sage?
Yeah, you interact all with Claude. So just directly with Intacct data, and then when you're talking to it, it'll talk back to Intacct and figure out what data it needs to pull.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that, I mean, you're interfacing via Claude as you, and so your permissions, your ability, to see stuff, um, passing through the AI gateway is related to your permissions, and you're only able really to interface with, and people that are using that are only able to interface with Sage based on kind of your credentials and your security.
Wonderful question. All right, they're coming in hot, by the way. Keep them coming. All right, Jason Maurice wants to know, does close automation rely on checklists that you set up? Can it suggest checklist items? Can close do things like make sure all necessary vendor bills are included in a given period of time? And thanks for the kudos, Jason.
Yeah. So yes, Jason, it relies on checklists. So there's out of the box checklists that come with close automation, and then you can add like specific tasks for your specific close. And so yeah, there's like something like, one of the out of box tasks, for example, is review all unposted bills. And then there are links directly kind of to do that within the checklist, right? So if it's do the bank rec, you click a button, it takes you to the rec for that entity. Review unposted bills, it's going to take you to that screen. So it's a combination of out of the box tasks, and then you supplement that with your close specific tasks.
Excellent. All right, Harry Rosen out of New York City wants to know, does the journal entry outlier tool allow you to build in your own logic, or does it review entries based on its own learning only? The question.
Yeah, it's the latter. So when you turn it on, it's going to train on your historical data, and then it will learn every day and train every night based on feedback you give it. So if it flags something as exceptional today and you think that's okay and approve that journal entry, it will learn that that's okay. And when the system trains again tonight, tomorrow, it would know that that's okay. So there's no way to kind of build your own logic though.
Okay, makes sense, makes sense. All right, do we have any other questions popping up? I don't see any just yet, but let me say this. As we wrap up today, a few themes stand out. First, AI is real and delivering value today. Second, trust, governance, and security remain absolutely critical. And third, the biggest opportunity isn't replacing finance professionals. It's helping finance professionals spend less time gathering information and more time using information to make better business decisions. So one thing that I've taken away from conversations with finance leaders throughout the years, that the organizations, they're looking for practical outcomes. So that means they're looking for productivity, looking for visibility, and they're looking for better decision making. The organizations that benefit most won't necessarily be the ones that move fastest. You know, it's that tortoise and the hare thing, right? They'll be the ones that combine innovation with trust, governance, controls, and strong business processes. So, on behalf of Dave, by the way, our contact information is that we would love to get together with you in a more intimate setting, perhaps, one-on-one or whatever the case may be. Bring your team. Let's take a deeper dive. Our contact information is there. We'll get it on the calendar and make something happen. But listen, on behalf of Dave, Lane, and the entire Madken team, I really appreciate you all joining us. This is to be continued, so be on the lookout. But I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for
Thanks,
coming.
Mike. Thanks, everybody. Yep.